Hi and welcome back to another foodie video. I'm going to be sharing you how we make this delicious birria. This recipe is so simple. It's actually my mother-in-law's and she calls this barbacoa. So let's get started with the ingredients that you're going to need. So first off, we're going to be using one chile pasilla. None of these chiles are spicy. They're just to give it flavor, and this is what the packaging looks like. This is the Chile California. We're going to use between 6 to 7, but in the video I'm going to use only 6. These are dry chilies. We're going to also need a few bay leaves. We're going to use lots of garlic. And then this is going to be our spice mix. It's called especias mixtas. There's actually a pickling spice. We're going to use half of that packet as well. And then to make a salsa, like a hot sauce to go with our birria, we're going to be using Chile de Arbol. These are spicy. The Chile California is what's going to give it that color. Now the cuts of meat that I'm using is a cross rib roast, and this doesn't come with a bone. It's boneless, so I need a bone, and I'm going to be using Beef Shanks, I think it's called, but in Spanish it's called chamorro. Yeah, Beef Shanks. I'm going to use that. I'm only going to use one since that has the bone, and that's going to build flavor for us. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take off the stems off the chiles. And then we're going to take out as many seeds as possible from inside just by cleaning them out. Some will stay in there, but just try to take out as much as you can because those seeds are bitter. And since these are dehydrated, we need to hydrate them again. So we're going to add 6 Chile California and 1 Chile Pasilla. We're going to add hot water and just enough for it to cover it, and then we're going to boil. And while that's boiling on the stovetop, I'm going to start cutting my meat. This is the beef chink. I'm going to take off as much fat as possible. You can definitely leave as much fat as you want. My mother-in-law just takes off as much as she can as possible, and even when I buy the meat, I try to get one that doesn't have too much fat. Now, even though I'm taking it off, we're still going to have a lot of fat while we're cooking it. So it's going to be up to preference. When you do make your quesadillas, what people use mainly is that fat to dip the tortilla in and then crisp it up. With the amount that I'm taking off, I still get a good amount of fat. I just don't want a lot of fat in there. So my mother-in-law taught me to do this, and this is what I do. And then I'm going to start cutting off the meat into about 1 to 2 inches, just bite-sized pieces. This cut of meat will get tender as it cooks, but it doesn't like fall apart. So it's just perfect, these bite-sized pieces, since this is going to cook for about 3 hours. Now that my chiles are boiling, as soon as it boils, I'm going to turn off the heat. I also forgot to mention, make sure you wash and clean them after you de-seeded them. Now to a blender, I'm going to be adding my chiles to my blender because we're going to be blending this up. And then we're also going to be adding about 6 big garlic cloves. And then I'm going to also add some of that water that was in there, just enough to cover it. And I'm going to blend this up. This right here is our birria sauce. This is the Chile California, is going to give us that flavor. I'm also going to add a tomato. My mother-in-law adds a tomato to take off the bitterness. And then instead of using salt, I'm using only the Knorr Chicken Bouillon, and I'm using a couple of tablespoons in there. And I'm also going to be adding half of that pickling mixture inside. I'm not adding the big bay leaves. I'm just adding whatever's in there crushed and 1 Chile de Arbol, but it will not make this spicy at all. And then blend that up as well. Now to my pan, I'm adding all my meat that's cut up. And I'm not going to pan fry this. I'm not going to brown this. I'm doing this exactly like my mother-in-law does this and the way she taught me. And it's very simple. I'm going to do a half of an onion in there, and then I'm going to add 3 bay leaves. If you decide to do more meat, add more bay leaves. Now, this sauce is perfect. It's smooth. I don't need to strain it. And then my pot is about 6 quarts, so I'm going to fill it up with more water after that. And just get whatever residuals in there of the sauce mixture, and that's it. Pretty much that's it. All I'm gonna do now is let this come to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, I'm gonna put a lid on it, and I'm gonna let this cook for 3 hours. but I'm going to check at the halfway point about 1 hour and 30 minutes. I'm going to check it for water. If it is low, I'm going to add more water, and then I'm going to taste it for seasoning. Since I'm not using salt, I'm only using the chicken bouillon. I'm going to taste it. If it needs more, I'll add a little bit more. You can do the same. If you prefer to use salt and just less chicken bouillon, you can measure out by just tasting that. So this is my halfway point. My liquid did go down, but at this point, I did not want to add any water. Later on, when we were warming it up, I added a little bit of hot water and checked it for taste, and it was perfectly fine. As it cooks, the meat will start getting tender, the color will develop, and the sauce will start to thicken. So here I tasted it, I checked it for seasoning, and I needed a little bit more of the chicken bouillon. Just give it a quick mix. We're at the halfway point, and your house will start smelling amazing. Okay, right here I'm gonna be making the salsa. If you like a little salsa, this salsa is the one that my mother-in-law makes, and it's easy peasy. We're gonna use 15 Chile de Arbol. Take off the stem. We're gonna let these boil. We don't need to deseed them. As soon as they boil, we remove them from the heat, and then we're gonna use a blender. We're gonna add the 15 chiles. We're gonna add a little bit of water. We're gonna add 1 big garlic clove, and then we're gonna use some of the water to add in there. Just that salt to taste, whatever your preference, and that big pop of garlic clove. If you have smaller ones, use 2 or 3. And then I'm gonna blend that up. Make sure you blend this really good, because the first time I did it, it was a little bit chunky. I put it back in my blender and it was perfect. This should be very liquidy. And this is the hot salsa that my mother-in-law makes. It is hot. It's hot. So if you want to use less chiles, you can use 7. But if you want to do it the right way, use 15. This is what it looks like, and you just need a few drops. So after 3 hours, this is what the birria looks like, or barbacoa, as my mother-in-law calls it. And right here, you can see I have the fat, and it still develops while you're cooking it. So I skim off as much fat as possible, because I'm going to use that to make some quesabirrias. When people eat barbacoa or birria, what's mainly known for is the queso tacos. Look at all that fat, you see? Lots of flavor. And right here, it's very thick. I can definitely add more water if I wanted to, but I didn't. So at this point, you can just serve this up just like that with some rice and beans and tortillas. But I'm going to make some quesabirrias, and pretty much I'm going to start taking off some meat, and then I'm going to just chop it up, shred it up a bit, just a few pieces. And then I'm going to teach you how I make mine without making a hot mess on my stove. It's not the traditional way, but if you guys want to do it this way. So very tender, the meat. After 3 hours, it just pretty much cuts by itself. I honestly didn't even need the knife, but just cutting up the amount that I need, and we're gonna make some quesabirrias with it. And the meat was so good. It smells amazing. Very easy recipe as well. So I'm just continuing just to cut this up so I can add this to my tortilla. I add a little bit of oil to my griddle, and then I'm just warming up the tortilla. Traditionally, you dip the tortilla first and then put it on there, but to me that just makes a hot mess on my stove, and I really don't want to be messing with that. So I added the meat, I added the cheese, then I'm going to close my tortilla in half, and with the fat that I reserved on the side with my bowl, I'm going to ladle it on there and make sure it is covered. In my brain, it makes less of a mess, so this is just the way I do it. But if you don't want to do that and you don't care for that, totally skip this step. Dip your tortilla in, cook it, flip it, put the meat and the cheese. This just works for me, and it comes out really good, and it doesn't get stuck all over my griddle. And I try to take care of my griddle since it's a cast iron one. So then flip it and put it, and I do put a little bit of oil because that helps it crisp up the quesabirria. And then I use a little bit of more oil there. I'm gonna flip it, and you're gonna see how beautiful it comes out. So good. And then I'm just going to repeat the process. My girls love when they have their quesabirrias. So I'm going to make a few of those. I also like eating in a bowl with rice and beans. So I'm going to show you how I serve myself up that plate as well too. But here I'm just gonna make a few of them for some family. My girl doesn't like too much cheese, but you can add as much cheese and meat as you want. Again, repeating the process, adding, and I make sure to cover the whole tortilla, flip it, and then do it like that. This way too, I feel like the tortilla doesn't dry out as much. The sauce, you really get the flavor this way. But again, that's just my preference, a little tip. So on the side, I made rice, and this is just Mexican red rice that I make. I'll put the ingredients down below if you need a recipe, and I'll put a video on how I make it too. And then I also made some beans, but I didn't show it. But if you need a video, I'll put a video down below of how I make my beans. But for this plate, I just had the quesadillas, and then I had the rice on the side. And then inside, I like to add some onion and cilantro. So I had that chopped up. I add a little bit of the salsa, just a few drops because it is hot, but it gives it really good flavor. I like some onions and then some cilantro too. And then I always do a squeeze of lime. And then I'm just gonna add the same thing to mine. If you make these, you can definitely add more meat, more cheese. You can grill the cheese on the outside, whatever your preference is. I'm just giving you and sharing you guys my mother-in-law's recipe that she was so sweet to share with, and very easy and simple to make. But besides that, delicious. Once I tried hers, I can't really eat other people's. It just doesn't taste as good to me. That's how good this is. And then I have the consomme on the side. I will use the same things that I use my taco with. I'm going to add lemon juice, and then I'm also going to add onion and cilantro, and I do put a little bit of hot sauce in there as well. And this is just the broth, the consomme part. This is what everybody likes to dip their tacos in. Usually if you just have the tacos without the cheese, you can just drink it. That's how they serve it to you too. You get it like in a little mug and you just drink it like that while you're eating your tacos. And then I was trying to be fancy and adding cilantro on top. I don't know why. Okay, this is what my plate looks like. Very delicious. It is taking a little bit of time to make this, but it's very simple. It's not that complicated. You don't have to add like 100 ingredients. It's just to the point. Okay, a little dip. And that was so good. Let me show you my favorite way to eat it. This right here, the bowl. I have pinto beans there. I have the rice. I have the meat. I have the broth, onion, cilantro, and a little squeeze of lime juice. And you can have this with tortillas on the side. This is my favorite way to eat it, and it's so good. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to check out the description. There'll be videos and of course the ingredients and the recipe for this video. Thanks for watching. Bye guys.